Hi, I'm Virginia, and welcome to the Health Creators Podcast, where we talk about the impact and business of being a health creator. Here with me today is Adrian, all the way from New York. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, let's get straight into it. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so my name is Adrian Miranda. I am a physical therapist turned content creator on all different platforms. I started this brand called Gross Anatomy. There's also a business behind it, but for me, it was I wanted to create comedic narrative content. In other words, instead of me talking to the camera, "Hi, my name's Adrian, and I'm a YouTuber. I'm going to teach you how to fix your shoulder." I wanted to create actual, real comedic scenarios of maybe a couple. One has a bad back, the other one's they're moving, and there's a comedic thing that occurs, but it's all relatable. So for me, it was, can I create this educational, narrative, scripted, real life scenario content that's still going to teach you something about your body? So that's me.
Awesome. So, why did you start creating health education videos in the way that you do, in a comedic way?
I come from the orthopedic, clinical setting, and a couple of reasons. One is I found that television. So for me, it's television now. You can call it your mobile device or social media, but I found that the television was a way to get to people's homes and to people's nowadays pockets with their smartphones. And there was a barrier to entry into getting good clinical care. And so I said, let me meet the people where they are. And that was one of them. The second reason is because I grew up in a very poor, underserved community, including my mother when I was 8 years old, had a hip replacement. And I clearly remember my dad came home, my mom told my grandmother who was babysitting us, say, we can't go back. We can't afford the co-payments. I mean, at the time it was, we can't afford it. Now I know it was the co-payment. So I said, what can I do in a way that's going to motivate people? It was a behavioral change vehicle. And I said, let me put it on TV because everybody watches TV. Everybody talks about the next season of Cobra Kai or Stranger Things, or for me, it was the telenovelas or what was on the news last night. And so I decided to be a really good clinician. So I did a ton of like education and postgraduate work and residency and specializations. And I learned video production. From there, I learned even more. So 3D animation, gaming, you name it, podcasting, musical theater as well. And it was just a way to kind of get to people's households or get in front of people in a different way. I just wanted to do it in a comedic, narrative focused, character driven way that is still kind of an outlier. It's not, massively accepted, but you've definitely seen shows like this called Grey's Anatomy or Scrubs. And so that's why I wanted to do it because I just saw how expensive healthcare was in the US. We're in different countries, but in the US, the healthcare system is quite broken. And so that was my way, my long journey, long way of why I started creating health education videos in the manner that I do it.
Amazing. So I thank you for sharing that. But also, I would say from a UK perspective, and also I'm in Germany at the moment, with the UK healthcare system, even though it's free and accessible, at the point of care, it's free, but there are waiting lists.
Mm-hmm.
So people do tend to want to either go into private care or go to another country to get the kind of health services that they need. And in Germany, everyone pays insurance, whether you are getting it taken out of your employment salary package, or if you're a freelancer, there's like a minimum payment that you need to make. And so there is like an insurance market, but it's a bit more controlled. But the access to care in Germany is definitely a lot better than in the UK. Sorry, but I would say the US. And so the US, you do
Yeah.
have some challenges there, like you've acknowledged, and I'm not sure if you know how that could be solved. But what's your process to create health videos right now? So how did that kind of change over time? From when you first started to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so it's so funny. Actually, on LinkedIn, I posted my very first production, which is a big undertaking. When I look back, I'm like, I can't believe I did that after just like my first course in producing and never been on camera really. Wasn't even comfortable on camera. I just posted that I think last week or earlier this week. And so it's documentaries. I want to do documentaries, but I realized that really wasn't me. I love watching documentaries. I watch tons of them, but as far as producing them, it wasn't that. So how has it changed? So now it's comedic, characters and silly, and so the process is twofold. One is I either have a patient that really resonates with the public, or I just think it's a captivating kind of story or condition. So usually there's two things. It's not just your bad shoulder, bad neck, or a disease that you're facing, but it's the person. They're married, they have a job they hate or love, they have a job that they can't do that they love because of whatever condition. And then I find some type of pop culture reference and I mesh the two. And I just change a couple things here and there. So that's the process. On the flip side, I could be watching a movie on Netflix, a brand new movie on Netflix, and my brain literally already thinks, how can I turn that into a comedy sketch of, a bad knee? For example, I was watching a lot of Key and Peele, and so the Stretch Brothers sketch that I did was really based on Key and Peele's. It was like step aerobics sketch, and I said, all right, well, what can I do to like, and also like, it depends on the camera angles and how many people do I have and what DP am I using? Do I need a lot of really clear audio for it? The karate anatomy sketch was just, I wanted to just teach you anatomy, but I had to make it really, really simple. So what I do, I just decided to, teach self defense by using three muscles and then hitting somebody in the crotch, and that was it. So I really, and it was during the time of Cobra Kai, so I was kind of like riffing off of Cobra Kai when it was becoming a season 1 or 2. It was really popular. So I either see a movie or TV show, an artist that's blowing up, like the Freddie Mercury was when Bohemian Rhapsody came out, and I just sit on it and think about how do I combine the education with it. So either it's a patient or a condition, and I just happen to come across a pop culture reference that fits really well. And number two is I watch something I really enjoy, and I'm like, I want to do that. I want to act like that, and I do it, and I can mesh them. The third process is somebody comes up to me or messages me or meets me somewhere and says, I want to write for you. I want to do this for you. I want to be in your show. Can we come? And so we come up with it together. So that's the third process. I don't really talk about too much, but those are three processes. Number 1, 2 are usually the most common. Number 3 has happened many more times than you think. So
Awesome. So then do you kind of get the idea, then you script, then you plan production, and then you kind of, you get the cameras, the actors, the actresses, you make the set to the studio, and then you have a filming day. How is that? How long does that take? And is that, how long has it taken you to kind of develop that process?
Oh yeah, if it's that's a great question. If I were to like a 2-minute sketch can be, if I were to say, hey, Adrian, here's all the money you need, all the props that you need, go shoot, film it, and just put it on YouTube and do all the thumbnails like that. For 2 minutes for the sketches, it takes about 3 to 4 hours to film. And usually there's a little bit extra time left over. For the web series, the 10-minute episodes in the classroom, that was again 4 hours. We did the 10-minute series. The long medium form, I would call it. But if you were to tell me, here's a lump of money, here's costumes, whatever you need, it would probably take me, to be frank, 8 hours, like a full day. And so part of that is because I'm a really fast writer, extremely fast writer. So for me, that's been a blessing. I've had to train myself in a lot of things. I am not a good writer like you are, like in SEO or sales or things like that. I'm getting better. I promise you. I've taken courses. I'm better. But if you tell me I want to write a script about a podcaster in Germany who has a really bad SI joint problem and they just fidget and the audio just is terrible, I can do that within the next, if it's 2 pages long for a 2-minute sketch, 3 pages, I can do that in 10 minutes, 5 minutes maybe. And so that's really fast where sometimes people get blocks, right? They get blocked. So that's just, I've had a couple natural gifts, and that's been one of them that I discovered over time. So that's the quick part. Then the other part is the production. In other words, like the staging on camera. If I'm doing the shoulder problem, if I'm doing just a general stretching concept like strengthening or stretching or something like that, it's the blocking and the actual production is what takes longer. And depending on the camera person, the DP, how familiar they are with movement, right? Because sometimes I do have to educate the actors and the DP about, we have to use this shot because the shoulder, I'm going to put a graphic on top of it and I need you to take this angle, or this part of it, you have to watch me move across the frame and things like that. So that's usually actually what takes a little bit longer, that I have to plan in advance. So I might write it down in my notes on my phone or write it on a document or a storyboard. The communication is what actually takes me the longest. So when I have a new DP, or if I have an existing DP and we're doing a complete, like we did the musical number, right? So I had to kind of explain what the shots were going to be like with the musical numbers. that's also, and also the other part is I have actors who've never really acted in an educational way. I have animators who've never done healthcare animation. I've had people who've never have done this thing in performance, but not this thing. So there's always kind of this transition moment. That's what takes the longest. And so like I would probably spend half a day for all of that stuff, and maybe the editing, same thing, probably not nearly as much time as you might think, because usually I plan the edit as soon as I'm planning the shoot. So like 8 to 9 hours, you bunch it all up. That's a pretty good day. Like if I have a great idea, you give me all the things. That's how long it takes. The reason it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks is because I'm ordering the thing from Amazon. I'm looking for stores to find the right basketball shorts for the next basketball sketch, or the right colors, or I'm talking to my actor to get the character going, or they have feedback, they want to rewrite some lines. That's usually what takes time right now. And so there's little details that you forget about, or like looking for the right court you might spend, and that could be like during my regular day. Like I'm walking down the street, I'm going to pass by the basketball court. I might look at the daytime and see, oh, okay, cool. I might go at night, happen to be in the neighborhood, I go by it. So those are the little chunks of time that you don't ever realize that do add up. But from soup to nuts, it's 2 minutes to 10 minute the classroom. It's about a full day. And then I give like an extra like half a day for the thumbnails, switching maybe the YouTube stuff that I have to put up, and change the keywords, change the titles, and then any final edits, things like that.
So what impact have your health videos had so far? And what have how have you heard feedback from your videos?
Yeah, and just so you know, it's not just video. So it's podcasts. Everything's narrative. So it's podcasts, it's animation, it's videos, it's live theater as well. I've done. And so, for example, my podcast was in the Astoria Film Festival last year or 2 years ago. Was selected, and that was some zany people calling in to my character, Dr. Dennis, who moonlights as a radio talk show host, answering pain questions. And every person that calls in is just wacky and zany and distracted, like most of us in real life. So I got that, and honestly, it's hard to judge because, for example, I was on Facebook and I put a stretching silly video. I forget what it was, and 2 years I put it out like two. It was like one of my first pieces of content. It wasn't greatly produced, and then 2 years later, my buddy moved to Florida. We're reconnecting. I'm gonna be in town, and he's like, "Hey, just so you know, I love your videos." And I was like, "What?" Like, "Oh, yeah, your video. What video?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I had the hamstring tendonitis, and your video helped me." And it was like a silly one, and I was like, "Oh, that was the first time." The second time was my uncle. My uncle messaged me on Facebook just checking in, and he's just like, "Hey, I love your video. Help me with my rotator cuff problem." And I was like, "What?" So it's almost like on delay, and so on LinkedIn, I get messages, where someone who's got to be in their like 50s or 60s, a CEO, owner of a business, says, "Hey, I watch your content with my daughter who's 12 years old. We love it. Keep going." I get a message saying, "Can you do a John Wick one?" So the impact has never all only been about I'm healing your problem. It's also about healing your soul. Like you should laugh. And I actually inadvertently made it so it's co-viewing. I kind of PG-13, like it's kind of like got some raunchy, silly toilet humor in it, but it's supposed to kind of hit like the 12 and up, 16 and up market, where you can kind of watch it with your parents or your kids or your grandparents and say, "Hey, this character reminds me of you, Virginia. Go watch it. Watch, you see what I'm talking about." And so that was literally my goal. And the fact when I get messages, several messages of people watching it with their kids, my actor, she was supposed to do her review her lines, and she messages me, "Just so you know, I know my lines, but I want to let you know my 12-year-old son was helping me with my lines and decided to go to your channel to do some research. Ended up watching all your videos for a 2 hour flight from Florida." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So that was something that the impact is. And the goal is that the impact that it had. He's now 17, I think, 16, 16. I think he's 16 now. The impact is that he remembers those stretches. When he's 17 playing soccer, he's a track runner actually. When he's a track star and he gets injured, he can go back and remember, "Oh, that was something funny that stuck with me." That's the impact I actually want to have. I don't want it to be, "Ow, my knee hurts. Let me go to YouTube now." It's more of like, "My knee hurts. Oh, I remember this video. Let me go back and check it out." And it stuck with you because it was some silly character. It was Michael Jackson. It was Freddie Mercury. It was Mary Poppins. It was some weird, 80s, aerobics instructor. with short shorts that reminded you that, oh, I hurt my knee, let me go watch that. So that's always been the vision, and it's a long one, and I understand that, but that's what I wanted to do, because the shows that I grew up with in the '90s still resonate with me to this day, and I remember how much joy I had and happiness I had, and there were good topics that to this day, like if you look at the Fresh Prince of Bel Air clips of why did my dad leave me, like those are being shared now about when the Eddie gets arrested for no reason, and so those are things that even to this day still resonate. We remember those things, and that's what the television and kind of like the television, the ensemble cast, and look at Stranger Things, Cobra Kai, How I Met Your Mother, Family Guy. Those are things that kind of stay with us, and amazing credits to social media people who are teaching people about their injuries, and I do it myself too for the swing dance community, but it lasts with you for a long time, between family and dinners and talks. And so the impact I've had, if I could have, and I've had done some data about like ages from 18 to 85, 65 in YouTube, and they're pretty even. Luckily, it's kind of like skews more than 25 to 35 male, but they're pretty all even, male, female, and the ages 18 to 65, where I'm like, I think I did it. I think I'm doing it. But the impact is far beyond health. It's about emotional health, about mental health. It's about just laughing. If you're having an injury or a condition, taking care of a parent, you're dealing with immigration status issues. I mean, that stuff is in the web series. And so I realized that the impact I want to have are delayed and immediate as well. So,
Yeah, that is really amazing to hear. And I think that one of the great things about healthcare content and any kind of storytelling content is that if you do it well, then it's something that will continue to get views for many generations to come. And, even when YouTube first started, the videos weren't that great, but people kind of grew up with all of the YouTubers that continue to create content. And
right.
it's
Yep.
similar to kind of the experience that you are building for your community is you're
Mhm.
creating these skits and comedic videos, but you're also making them relatable and emotionally, connecting with your audience so that they remember it when they need it. And I think that's really a hallmark of a great content creator. So well done for doing that. That is really impressive. And
Thank you.
um especially if you're people that especially like family members that you feel like might cringe at your content, but actually they're coming to you to thank you for it.
Yeah.
It's a great to flip
Yep.
that on its head. Yeah.
Mhm. Well said. Exactly.
So, what are your top tips for health creators who want to get started?
Do it. I didn't go to film school. I didn't read Save the Cat until I don't know 6 years into film, learning how to do film. Don't get me wrong, I was studying a lot about how to write, the three-act play structure, writing in general, um, and learning your craft. So like I remember I had a DSLR camera, and my roommate, who was a film graduate, he went to school for film. He's like, "Have you actually studied how to use your camera?" And I was like, "No, I'm just using it as a point." And then guess what I did for the next 4 months was learn everything about DSLR, ISO, shutter speed, everything, lenses, ND filters, and so. But I had to do the work. There's like study, but also practical application. And a lot of times we get all this information and I would be doing hours of YouTube learning, but I always made sure I did it. I practiced it, and I would show it. So that's the thing is like a lot of times it takes a lot of vulnerability to show your work, and it's scary to be like, hey, I wrote a musical about physical therapy. Can you? And it's based on Hedwig and the Range. Do you want to read it? Or just saying it out loud is very uncomfortable. So by just even doing it, showing it to people is a step in the right direction. And you're just sharpening your sword. You're sharpening your tool. And so that's part of it is like learn the craft, like almost like 60-40. Learn the craft, like spend a lot of hours learning it, studying from other people who've done it better than you or are in the same boat, and then go and do it. Write at play, write that cold email, write that DM, write that course, that digital course, write that curriculum. A lot of times it's like we absorb a lot from we know what to do. We can tell other people. We ourselves don't sit down and actually do the actual work. That's part of it. So pick up a camera. There's no excuse. You have this. Even the worst cell phone today has great camera quality. And if you're in a beautiful sunny day with windows, you can get excellent. You don't need a red, Komodo Red or an Arri Alexa camera. You don't need a Shure or a Sony lavalier mic. I'm using a Sony $20 headset. You don't even need to show your face. But the goal is like just do it. Especially as a writing is such an important form of communication. I hated English class in school. Hated it. Actually, my old English teacher from high school, he messaged me. He's like, "Hey, I've been seeing your stuff." And this is 20 years ago, I guess now. Holy crap, it's been a long time. And he's like, I shared it with our science teacher, and I was like, Eric, I didn't like English, and now I appreciate all the stuff you taught me. I was just like, do I wish I paid more attention at the time? I don't know, but I think I should have put like 5% more effort into, if I knew what I was going to be doing today, which I didn't think I was going to be doing that in high school, then of course I should have paid more attention. But writing is so powerful. It's communication. Our internet is what it uses, our words and our keywords. And so that's also just something important. Some people are gifted at just ad lib and don't need scripts, but at a certain point, you have to send your message out and say, read this, look at this, engage with this, and what it is. How do you do it? It's usually the written word. And so even if you network with somebody in person, guess what? You have to write an email, nice to meet you, or send a DM, nice meeting you. So how do you do that, right? And so, but you just have to do it. A lot of times we learn. There's theory and there's practice, right? So just practice, and then you'll get the theory, and then you'll do it. And so, part of it is there's a natural talent for me to write scripts, dialogue scripts, right? But I still practice it. I write scripts all the time. I still do it. Even if it doesn't get produced, I still have a bunch of scripts in the can. I'm still writing stuff or writing down ideas on my phone, and it just sharpens your tool because that's just the way to get it out there.
Yeah, and I also write in public as well. So I see you writing a lot on LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
lately. So it's always really good to
Yeah.
write so that people could just
Yeah.
read and interact with you, and you get into a conversation and it's fun and people read your stuff, and then you that's how you
Yeah.
build relationships. And then we're here now
Mm-hmm.
because actually Adrian messaged me on LinkedIn and said, hey, could we chat about content creation? And I was like, actually, do you know what? I was planning a podcast anyway. Why don't you come on and be a guest, and let's do this? And here we are. So
Yeah.
thank you for like being
Yeah.
the
And
catalyst to
it was probably
get this going.
a poorly crafted message, probably, but it still worked, right? So I just did it.
Yeah.
You just got to do it. And that's something that when I'd had over the years, clinicians ask me, how do you do video? How do you do this? How do you write? How do I wrote a book and I'm scared to show it, and I didn't tell my family. But it can be, as long as it's there, it's out there. Like you said, kind of share it, be public about it. You'll understand what resonates with you, what doesn't, and what resonates with you as well. And that's something that I had to realize, was that I wanted to be this like Sanjay Gupta documentarian and expert. Yeah, that didn't speak to me. I could clearly see, but now it's like, hey, Adrian, you want to do a sketch about baby reindeer? 100%, I'm on it, and I'll do that in no time. So it's also like what resonates with you as the person, because then where your passions lie and then what you're trying to accomplish, they mesh together, and it becomes easier. It's not a chore to share these things necessarily.
Yeah, and I think you enjoy it more as you sharpen your tools, as you say, because you feel like you've made
Mm-hmm.
progress, and then the quality of what you create gets better and better. And I've definitely felt that if I record something and I leave it too long to edit it, it will never get published because I feel like
Yeah,
I've made so much progress between that video and the next video where I filmed them a week apart. And then I'm like, oh, I'm embarrassed to release that and then release this because that one's not as good. But actually, there's nothing wrong with that
yeah.
one. It's a piece of my progress.
Yeah, yeah. And so I feel like there's like a bell curve what you're talking about,
Yeah.
because I've experienced that 100%. And then I will, I'll be like, oh, it's really, really terrible. And then why am I going to go back? And then when I look at it even later date, I'm like, oh, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't as bad as I thought. So there's always like this kind of like threshold of like, oh, I don't want to post that. I did that 2 months ago. I wasn't that good. Now I'm way better. And then you look back and, oh, it wasn't that bad. Just like I'm
Yeah.
doing like shorts, doing clips of my web series. I'm kind of laughing. I'm like, oh my gosh, like my actors is so good. Oh, I was funny. Oh, did I say that? Oh my gosh. So I think it's also like being kind to yourself. It's like I told this to one of my editors. He wasn't happy with like episode 5, and I was like, it's out of our hands. Like let the public decide what they think about it. So at a certain point, it's kind of like just let it go. Let the people tell you. The people might be more fulfilled than you think. You know.
Yeah, that's true. There's no such thing as a perfect take. And You just need to put stuff out
Yeah.
there, get the feedback, and then reiterate. Just keep going. And that's the fun of
Yeah.
it. That the fun of creating content is the journey. There's no real destination. And I think also from everything that you've
Exactly.
created, you said that you've kind of generated a whole business out of it. So do you want to talk a bit about how it's given you lots of opportunities?
Yeah. So, obviously the big vision is to sell it to a streamer or a big studio. But what's been cool is that people see my skills in producing, writing, directing, technology. And so I've been, building a business pretty much doing marketing, social media, content, being an advisor consulting, different projects. So, that's kind of where it is. So they see this big production. And one of the things that, I'm a bit bullish on lately is like, hey, you kind of have to wear many hats. You kind of have to do all these things. And so usually if they see you do one thing, they might need another thing, but they're like, hey, I have this problem. Can you help me solve it? So I'm able to say, first of all, I usually typically know how to do that. And secondly, I know exactly how to kind of tell their story, right? So in marketing, social media, I'm like, I want to get to know you. What are your goals? What are you trying to be? Who are you? Who do you want to display yourself as? And I say, nah, maybe have you thought about these 2 or 3 options? I think this is how you best see yourself. So as a storyteller, as a clinician, for me as a clinician, I learned just people. I spend tons of time with people dealing with their injuries, but also with what they're dealing with at home and outside the clinic. And so a lot of times it's like, it's a people business, right? It's who you know, it's how you know, it's how to kind of like fix the problem. So as far as the content creation, helping companies, build their social media presence, do marketing for them, and being kind of like now I'm kind of creative direction. It's kind of where I sit now.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Adrian, for sharing all of your words of wisdom and your story. And I hope that the audience that's watching or listening, that you feel inspired and you go out there and you create that content that you've been thinking about for a while. Any final words from you, Adrian?
No, I appreciate you having me on this podcast, and I really think that hopefully people will dive into whatever it is that they're doing. Sorry, whatever it is that they have a passion for. Usually you have a career, and maybe not. You're not doing enough. You feel like you're not doing enough. You want to change the world, and it's just putting it out there, making it public, trying it, doing it, failing, come back. I mean, I've given up. I don't know, like maybe like 100 times so far. I think one time was public on LinkedIn back in October. But part of it is just kind of it's part of the journey, and I've been very fortunate where people around you will the right people will surround you and uplift you and kind of push you forward. So if you were trying to become a writer, in this healthcare space, first of all, we need more of them, whatever kind of genre you're trying to get into. So just don't be afraid, and there's people like us who can support.
Yeah, so definitely, writing and video creation. There's loads of space for everyone in the healthcare creation space. So thank you so much, Adrian, and I'm so glad you didn't give up. Keep up the great work, and I'll check you out in the next episode. Thank you for watching or listening. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay, let's
Are
go
you
for
sure?
it.
Are you sure it's
I'm
working?
sure. I hope
I'm
so.
so nervous. I'm already nervous for both of us.
Hi, I'm Virginia, and welcome to I Messed Up. So do it again.
We're supposed
I'm
to be
just so
very
excited.
formal. We are
I
doctors
know.
and
I know,
healthcare
right?
providers. It's gotta be professional. You're gonna be on a professional network, so you just gotta simmer it down and
A
get
little bit.
People expect us to have a
But it's still
specific
fun.
demeanor, without laughing. But yeah, sure. So much fun. Totally fun.
Shall we just wait for the siren to go?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's New York City. Unfortunately, that's going to be part of every podcast I do. Is like there's always a siren.
Yeah.
There's also salsa and merengue music. There's an ice cream truck that comes by. So in the meantime, you can ask your question. I'll unmute.
No. I want to hear it. It's atmosphere.
This is an immersive. It's an immersive podcast experience. That's what it is.